Hello, everybody. So we're going to continue talking about pivot tables, some more things that you can do, and a few more examples. Okay, let's get to it. All right. So before our example using pivot tables, we were getting like a sum of people's sales or the sum of the number of customers, things like that. But sometimes you don't want just a sum. For example, you might want averages, or maybe you want to see the max. What is like the top sales or something like that. Okay, and there's some other things you can do like various formatting that I'll show you in a second. Okay, so let's pull up our example here. And let's just quickly take this data and make a pivot table. So let's grab all that. Okay, and let's sorry about that. I forgot to enable editing. Okay, so grab all that. Okay, insert pivot table. New worksheet, that's fine. And let's say I want to see like the sales of each person in the various regions. Okay, so salespeople, regions, and net sales. Net sales. Okay, so there we have our sales for each person. And as you can see right here, it says sum of sales. So there's Joseph's total sales in the middle, northwest, and from our data before, right, his sales in the middle, and then in February, his sales in the middle, March, sales in the middle. So all that gets kind of put together into a sum. Okay, but if I don't want a sum, some of the options I can get to, for example here, value field settings. Okay, let's go into there. And here you can see we can choose. Instead of sum, let's say I want to do an average. Okay, and there you can see the averages. Okay, so his averages are fairly similar across the board, except for in the north he does a little bit worse there, doesn't do quite as well as in the other regions. Okay, or I might be interested in the max. So maybe I want to see like, okay, who had the highest sales, and whoever has the highest sales in each region, I'm going to give them a bonus or something like that. So let's go for max. And we see that in the middle, we see, and Maria has the highest sales in the middle, so we give her a bonus. And then here we can see Lawrence in the north gets a bonus, and here it looks like also Lawrence gets a bonus for the west. Okay. Now a couple things that we can also format. We can see that these are not dollar or euro values, so that might be nice. So you can format them directly from the home page like you would normal cells. Another place to format these is to go back in here, and here you can control the formats as well too. So let's go here and we'll go for accounting, dollar, euro, whatever it is you fancy. Okay, so let's go for dollars. Okay, and you can see it gets formatted nicely there. Okay, other things you might be interested in doing, for example, if you right click, you can have pivot table options. Okay, so going in here, you can see various options, and one of them that I often like to turn on and off are the totals. So for example, sometimes the totals aren't interesting to me, so I turn those off. Okay, and I'm just left with the data itself. Okay, so pivot table options, and you can see some of the other ones there, layout and format. You can kind of go through those on your own time. Okay. So sometimes, yeah, those kind of add to clutter sometimes. If I'm not interested in them, might as well just take them off. Okay, so there's an example of modifying some of the different options that we have. Now, my next example, I'm going to take some more data, and this data is also available to you in Moodle. Okay, I'll make this visible very soon. Where is it? Right there, and climbing data. Now, I might have used this data before when we did the dividing into various sheets. I think you recall. It's an example that shows all of my climbing data. right? Really, I just want to show everybody how cool I am by climbing and whatnot. But yeah, whatever. Maybe climbing's not even cool anymore. Anyways, so this was my data of all the climbs that I've done and sorted by my grades. So this data is rather extensive, and I might want to summarize it. Maybe, try to concentrate on something. So I'll give you a second. Think about what's a question that I might be interested in. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try to think for a minute. What could possibly be interesting to summarize about this data? Okay, go ahead now. Okay, so some of your questions might have been something like this. It might be interesting to ask, like, how many climbs have I done in each difficulty? So how many climbs did I do in the 6th grade? How many climbs have I done in the 5th grade? Okay, or how many climbs have I done in each area? Which is my favorite area of climbing, right? Have I climbed more in a certain area or another? So let's try to find that out. Okay, so let's first start with how many climbs I've done in each grade. Okay, so let's grab that. And pivot to, you don't always have to grab everything. If I'm just interested in that, I might just grab like those things there. But let's just go and grab everything anyways, because I might want to change it later on. Okay, so let's go there. And, oh geez, I forgot to enable editing again. Okay, let's try that again. Taking all that. And let's insert pivot table. New worksheet is fine. And I said, of each grade, how many of them did I do? So how many of the grade 5A, 5B, 5C, etc. Okay, so the question is, what do I drag into here? Okay, so what I want to do is I want to know how many of the grades, right? How many of the grades, right? I use it as a label, but now I also want to quantify them. Okay, so if I want to quantify them, I can drag them and put them in there. When you drag them in the rows or in the columns, you're just making labels out of them. But when you drag them into the values, what you're doing is trying to quantify them. Okay, and you can see that by default it went to count, okay, and not sum. Okay, the reason for that is that if I go into my data and I look in the grade here, so here's the column grade, Excel, what it tries to do is it sees, are these numbers? Can I actually sum them? Okay, and in fact they are not numbers, right? So I cannot do 5C plus 5C plus 5C. It can't sum them, right? So the only thing it can do is it can count them, and it can count how many times it sees 5A, right? So it says 1, 2, etc. How many times does it see 5C? 1, 2, 3, etc. And it counts those for you, and that count comes up here. So there's my 5A's. Every time it saw the text 5A, it counted it, and it saw 12 of those, and it saw 15 of those. So you can see 6A, 33 of those. So in this range is where I usually do most of my climbing, 5C, 6A, and a few 6B, and then kind of in between there. Let's deal with the next question. So how many climbs have I done in each location? Okay, so let's move those out of here, and let's take location. Okay, and again, what I'm doing is I want to quantify, I want to see how many of these, so count the locations. And you can see there. So my favorite spot seems to be Ciampino, and I climbed there a lot. And the reason for that was actually I used to live near Ciampino, so it was very convenient for me. That was the main reason why. Anyways, you can make this as complex and as simple as you want. So for example, let's see which years that I climbed in each of these places. Let's take years and drop them into the column. Okay, so you can see the different years. And from 2010, I moved to Rome from Sicily. So from 2010, you'll see that's when Ciampino starts there, right? And then all these other places here was when I used to live in Sicily. So these are the climbs that I did back then. Okay. So right. So this time we're counting it because of course you can't sum these. You can't take location, and you can't do like Ciampino plus Ciampino, right? That doesn't work. So what Excel does is it defaults to count in that case. Now you can try to count other things. So let's try this again. Let's take years, drop that out of there. And let's say I have my locations here. And if I grab another thing like date and drop it in there, you'll see that I actually get the same numbers. Okay, and the reason why that is every time in the date field, if there's a piece of data that corresponds to Ciampino, it'll count that. Okay, so if there's a date 2009, 2010 or something like that, it corresponds to Ciampino, we'll count that. The problem is this might not be as accurate because let's say I do a climb in Ciampino and I don't have the date because I don't remember or whatever, and I left that blank, then this number would end up being 31 instead of 32. So when you're trying to count something, I would suggest counting the exact same label. That way you'll always get that number. Okay. One last example. So this is also available on Moodle. I've put a number of these examples on Moodle, so please go through that, download each of the examples and just kind of make yourself a question, see if you can solve it. So for example, in this one, we have food orders from different countries. Okay, so what product is being ordered? Is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? And let's say I want to compare the revenue generated from fruits and vegetables, and I want to see, okay, which type of food generates more money? Do vegetables make more money or do fruits make more money? Okay, so again, I could just select these two columns if I wanted for that case. Maybe I'll do that just to show you. So just selecting these two columns here, because that's what I'm really interested in for this specific question. Okay, so let's go to Insert Pivot Table. And you can see the only things that are available are those two things that I selected. And you can do that. However, the only thing is if I want to change my question, for example, if I want to change, like, I want to know the different types of vegetables like broccoli and carrots and stuff like that. Now I don't have that available anymore because I didn't select it. Okay, anyways, so just dealing with this one specific question, I want to category, and I want to take amounts, and you can see that fruits make much more in sales than vegetables. So let's modify this a little bit. Let's make it into accounting, euros, whatever, Chinese, Singapore. Okay, and you can see there. Okay, or if I'm interested in an average, for example, let's see what the average fruit sale is and average vegetable sale. Okay, so average fruit sale is actually lower, okay, but there's probably just a lot more of them than the vegetable. So that's an interesting statistic. So even though the average vegetable sale is higher in total, so I might make even like 2 charts in this. Okay, so that's another advantage with pivot tables, is they can very easily be turned into charts. Okay, so let's take this and copy and paste. Okay, now you might ask, why did I just copy and paste? Okay, and the reason it was that is if this ever changes, right, if I'm ever doing something else in there, I still have my data there to work with. Okay, so let's take that, insert chart. Okay, fruit and vegetables, and of course, nice nice title. And I notice that this doesn't start at 0, so that's the very first thing I'm going to fix, format axis, because that's a very important one. Like I said, we don't want to mislead our viewers. Okay, so you can see the difference there. And then my pivot table again, sum. And then here, let's generate another one, copy, paste, and insert chart. Okay, so average sales and total sales. Okay, so you kind of get the picture. So Of course, if I were to use these in a presentation, if I were to put these in like PowerPoint to show like an audience or something like that, I'd clean them up, format them a little bit, maybe put data labels, better title and stuff like that. But I won't spend time doing that. I'll just kind of leave it up to you to make sure to make nice charts. Okay, I just showed you how it's done. Okay, let's go back to a previous example. And I want to show you some more charts. So for example, let's say I have something here and I just want to see some more data here. And let's say I also want to know like, not region, product. So I want to see like the person, what they're selling and each year the performance. Okay. And I want to turn that into a chart. And I'll show you a slightly different type of chart. Last time when I made the charts, I actually took the data and copied and pasted it somewhere else. You can actually generate something called a pivot chart directly here. And what a pivot chart is it's a chart that's directly linked to your pivot table, so that if you actually change things of your pivot table, your chart changes accordingly. Okay, so this isn't so useful for presentation. Like if I'm going to put this in a PowerPoint or whatever, I don't really have time to kind of like fiddle around and change things. But this is very good for data analysis. So if you're looking at statistics and you're looking at trends and your boss tells you, please analyze this data and see what you find, it's very nice to kind of be able to play with it and say, okay, this is what it looks like if I don't have the products. This is each person and each year, and then products, and you know, it kind of changes accordingly. So it's kind of like a work in progress, I like to call it. Okay, so you can keep working, keep changing things, and keep looking to see if you find things. Okay, and if you find something, then maybe you want to isolate it, copy and paste it somewhere else so that you don't lose it. Okay, but as you're working, you can keep changing it like this. Okay, now I want to talk about the specific data and chart here, because as you can see, as you start putting more things, it gets more and more complex to a point where your chart kind of loses its meaning. Okay, and pivot charts, it's not very useful to actually put a title here, because as I said, pivot tables are linked to this, and when you change, the data will always change, so it's useless that you put a title if it's going to change anyways, right? If you're going to actually put a title, if it's going to be something that you're going to use, copy and paste it somewhere else, don't make it a pivot chart. Just make a normal chart out of it, one that doesn't change. But anyways, let's say I do want all this data, but as you can see, this becomes meaningless. It's just too complex. There's really no message in there. It's just really hard to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify things. Okay, so I'm going to actually take my products and I'm going to put them in the filters. Okay, and you can see this comes out with a much cleaner chart. Okay, but what is this showing right now? This is showing a summary of all the products. So all the products summed together do this. But let's say I want to know each individual product. Okay, so I'm going to take that, delete that, and I'm going to first filter, and I'm just going to see the data for FastCar. Okay, so FastCar, if I were to make a pivot chart, it would look like this. Insert pivot chart. Okay, and there's the data for FastCar. If I want to change it, there's the chart for Rapidzu. As you can see, you can change it. But let's say I want all three of them kind of like side by side or next to each other. Okay, so what I would do in that case is I would first go with this one, and like I said, isolate the data. So take that, right, copy and paste. Okay, and let's see if we can turn that into a chart. Insert chart. Okay, and you can see it puts that in there, so I might have to go in there, do the select data thing, and get rid of that one. Okay, and there I have this one. Now let's take the same thing and do it for Rapidzu. Okay, so there's the Rapidzu data. copy and paste, and we'll turn that into a chart. And again, I may need to get rid of that extra thing. And there we go. And I would do the same thing for the last super glue or whatever. What was it? Fast car. Rapid. Okay, so this is fast car rapid zoo. Okay, probably a better title. Net sales for Rapid Zoo over the years, or total net sales of fast car over 3 years, something like that. Okay. So yeah, so like this, I can have 3 different charts to compare, right? And doing it this way, copying, pasting the data out of the pivot table means that they don't change. So when I change the product, my charts don't automatically change, and I can kind of see them separate from each other. Okay, so yeah, pivot tables are a very nice way to organize your data as an intermediate step into a chart. Okay, remember that pivot tables are often just intermediate work, so changing, right, changing things here and often making an intermediate chart just to play around with the data and see different things. But once you want to make things permanent for presentations, remember to copy them and paste them out so that you can work with them that way.